Hi, I'm Anya, also known as Meppity, and today I want to talk about an animated show that I recently binge-watched. Scavengers Reign is one of my favourite pieces of media to have come out lately, and I simply have to talk about it. I know it came out in October of last year, so I'm a little late to the party, but whatever. None of my friends have watched it yet, and I find that unacceptable. So this is my plea for you guys to watch the show. If you haven't already, please, 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 I want more people talking about this damn thing. Scavengers Reign is an adult sci-fi drama created by Joseph Bennett and Charles Huetner. The story takes place on the distant alien planet of Vesta Minor and follows survivors of an accident aboard the interstellar cargo ship Demeter 227. After crash landing on the planet, the characters must make their way back to the Demeter in order to stand a chance of escaping this unforgiving planet. I'm going to go over my thoughts on the show and discuss why I believe it's a landmark series within the current animation world. This show is important, I think, and I also want to use this as a chance to discuss a couple little art and writing related things just for us storytellers. I'm going to keep this video spoiler free, so don't worry about that. That being said, I do encourage you to watch this show for yourself. I believe if you are in the US it is on Max, but I don't know about other countries. Overall, the story was successful. No part of the plot felt neglected or convoluted. I felt like the visuals and audio were equally important in telling the story, so it's definitely the type of show where you're supposed to be paying full attention. Some could argue that the character arcs were flat. This show does spend the majority of its time wandering from A to B, but personally, I have no issue with this. It made sense for the circumstances of everyone on that planet. Some people want plots with crazy detours and funky plot twists, and that's fine. But for as unreal as this world is, the plot was incredibly naturalistic. I felt like the characters' actions were never out of pocket, they always made sense, and there's not too much I can say about this without entering spoiler territory, so I'm going to move on. If you want more specific opinions from me, head to the comment section down below. I'd love to chat with you about your opinions and I'll give mine in exchange. One of my absolute favorite aspects of the show is the world building. I'll talk more about this when I get to the visuals, but overall, the writers did a fantastic job of creating a planet that has its own rules that the human characters must follow. This encourages a sense of realism whilst also presenting us with fun puzzles. Appeal in world building is largely dependent on how solid it seems. Think about any of your favourite shows, films, books. The likelihood is you love the setting just as much as the characters. After all, the human condition is universal. It remains consistent in every story. What sets these stories apart is where they take place. Avatar: The Last Airbender was massively successful in all kinds of ways, but something that especially stood out to me was how fleshed out the laws of the universe were. When a strong logic is built up and consistently demonstrated, everything around it clicks into place and makes sense. Viewers can, to a degree, fill in the gaps themselves, making us feel a part of the world we have been introduced to. Basically, it immerses us. One of the reasons Harry Potter was such a successful franchise was because it took place in a world where readers could imagine themselves being. There were rules to dictate what house you'd be in, or what spells you could cast, secrets you could uncover. I felt much the same with 2022's Wednesday, though mediocre at best, in my humble opinion. It took place also at a magical school, and that is the perfect environment for self-insert fanfiction. You can expand that story's universe by creating new stories within it because you've been given the tools to do so. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I don't think Scavengers Reign is exactly the show for alien sonars and Wattpad entries, but what I am saying is it clearly lays out its own rules, much like Wizarding School stories do, and that makes it easy to feel immersed. Something else that contributes to the show's success is the planet being treated as a character. I believe this is something integral to the success of any environment-heavy story. What's the point in world building if the story doesn't squeeze as much out of that world as possible? When writers treat a story and environment like a character, the audience and the other characters are granted the opportunity to observe it, better understand it, and most importantly, be impacted by it. The way the show makes the planet Vesta behave like a character was it forced the humans and aliens to react to it. A general concept when talking about good writing is action versus reaction. Humans don't normally just do something. There is usually something to prompt what we do, and that is typically brought on by outside stimuli. Spending time with friends makes us happy. Getting broken up with makes us sad. If someone comes up to me and asks if I've seen their cat, I'm not going to say,
12 times 12 is 144.
No, I'm probably going to say something a little more relevant, like,
"Oh, no, I'm sorry, but I haven't seen your cat. I hope you find it soon."
Compelling character relationships are formed by how characters react to each other. If you slap me, for example, I'm going to have a response of some sort. That response will say a lot about me and the dynamic between us. When the planet forces the characters to react to it, it strengthens the dynamic between it and each character. The writers could just as easily have made a very neutral environment that simply acts as a vessel for the rest of the story to take place, but that'd be such a boring waste. Instead, the planet serves as a reminder that nature is not our friend. But neither is it our enemy. It exists on its own terms. To nature, we are nothing, and I think that's pretty cool. Structurally, maybe spoilers, but not really, I loved how the majority of the show is 3 totally separate stories that only intertwine towards the very end. It gave each plot a chance to breathe and hold its own. Sometimes they'd bounce between stories every few shots, other times it was a good 10 minutes or so of one plot. This variety and pace kept up interest and never felt unbalanced or distracting. The show was absolutely a mix of characters I love to hate and characters I hate to love. The story seemed self-aware in that any time I got annoyed by a character's presence, they conveniently took them away. They weren't afraid to punish characters either by hurting them, driving them insane, or straight up killing them and everyone they loved. I cried a lot during this show. Not really wholehearted sobbing, but a more quiet type of crying. I was reminded every few minutes of my own humanity, put it that way. I suppose this is your warning. If you do not like death and gore, then I'm afraid this show is not for you. That being said, it never felt gratuitous. Any display of blood and guts felt more like a gruesome reminder of the fragility of life and that nature takes no prisoners. There was plenty of circle of life and what it means to be human theming in here, and sometimes it was demonstrated in super overt, non-plot relevant ways, but I think it worked. I believe the show really leans into its animated nature in more ways than one. One of them being, hey, let's get a little bit experimental for a moment, shall we? Though I say these moments weren't always plot relevant, it was at least always fleshing out the world a little more or contributing to a character's development. This show is filled with ups and downs. You didn't know what to expect half the time, and I mostly liked that. One character arc, however, I felt it became a bit much. They'd be like, oh, I'm going to die now. Oh wait, never mind, I'm fine. Oh, now I'm going to die. Or am I? That was so cringe. Oh my god, that was so cringe. Whatever. It was tiresome at best, and it left me too emotionally exhausted to feel much for this individual by the final episode, and I found that a great shame. And now, onto the visuals. Scavengers Reign looks spectacular. To me, it feels like a Mobius comic and Siamese music video had a baby. Both thematically and visually, I also imagine Scavengers Reign was inspired by the 2-installment Soviet film Vampirigione, or Vampires of Genoa. Both take place on alien planets and dedicate much of the story to observing the alien inhabitants and how they operate. This show strikes a lovely balance between intricacy and simplicity. Let's start with colour. Shading was selective, but well utilised. Even with most scenes being built with flat colour, the team behind the show managed to make each and every scene feel so atmospheric. Bright and vibrant in parts, dark and gloomy in others. This planet was not defined by one colour scheme, but rather a harmonious blend of palettes to signify a multitude of biomes. The bright whites and stark reds were well balanced against blue and greens, greys and browns, and so on. Line work. On the surface, the line work could be considered simplistic, but it does a lot of the heavy lifting to generate texture and detail. Because the shading is minimal, the line art is instead utilised to create volume, atmospheric depth, and so on. Shape language. Both on and off the planet Vesta, shape language felt cohesive. Some designs were super shapey. An immediately recognisable silhouette that comes to mind is the Demeter. The interstellar cargo ship looks like a sperm whale with train cars attached to it, which sounds kind of weird, but I'm sure you can picture it without even having to look at the actual design. If I was given a lineup of different spaceships, I have a feeling that I would be able to point this one out. I loved the giant columns jutting out of the ground in several scenes. In fact, this geometric smorgasbord of pipe-like structures was a design choice peppered throughout the world in a variety of ways. It feels like a recognizable element of both the world and the show. If I was to see these structures out in the wild, I would immediately think of Scavengers Reign. To contrast these big, geometric structures, there is plenty of naturalistic stuff. Blobby, bumpy, gnarled growths, carpeted floors, roots, leaves, and the ground itself twisted and warped, flowing across the screen. I adore how the big, blocky shapes were broken up by more organic forms. This is especially profound when exploring the relationship between organic and inorganic forms. If you've seen the show, you know exactly which character I'm talking about. Cinematography. Scavengers Reign was definitely one of the most screenshotable shows I've seen lately. No shot felt cheap or underdeveloped. Every environment was not only well designed, but beautifully composed. The board artists and layout teams were working overtime to make sure the environments shone in the best light possible. I really enjoy shows that aren't afraid to have still moments, giving us, the audience, a chance to take in scenes brimming with detail. Each still shot was gorgeous and never felt like a waste either. Anytime the pacing took a pause, it was to mirror the characters doing the same thing, or to introduce a new place to both of us. The sense of scale throughout was also fantastic. This one shot in the first episode blew me away. Look at these teeny tiny humans traversing a gargantuan cave. It really puts into perspective how large this world is. Similarly, there were shots that felt super claustrophobic, putting us in the characters' shoes when facing a tight squeeze. It felt like the show itself was breathing, undulating between the big and the small, tight shots on tiny creatures mixed with wide shots of vast expanses. Okay, that was a really flowery, over-the-top description of me being like, me like big and small, but whatever. There were a lot of slightly more abstract moments in the show, particularly with one subset of characters. These shots were super cool and interesting, and I cannot say much more without spoiling, but what I'm showing on the screen right now should give you a hint of what I'm getting at. Now, to an element of the show that I am slightly less obsessed with, the animation. To be honest, I have pretty mixed feelings here because on the one hand, you'd have some pretty mediocre, underwhelming shots, but then they'd be mixed with the most stunning, flowy moments. The more abstract or removed from reality, the better it got. As far as I recall, the fight scenes did look good, and my favourite part of the animation was by far the animal mechanics. I particularly liked these weird, creepy, monkey-like creatures that move in this really unnerving, slow and smooth way. So if I liked the animals, and I liked the abstract moments, and I liked the fight scenes, what did I not like? The humans talking. Some of these shots felt like choppy rotoscoping, and others felt like they were animated straight ahead without looking at the surrounding frames. It wasn't super distracting, but the bad was as noticeable as the good. Essentially, the highs were high and the lows were low. I just want to point out these two shots back to back. This was such a jarring contrast in quality to me, and I had to replay it 3 or 4 times. I don't know why, but this got to me. Are you seeing this? Am I going crazy? And hey, let's not forget that this is a series, not a feature film. Series are usually on a far tighter deadline and budget, so I can accept the shortcuts and economizations from time to time. Character designs. The creatures were awesome. I loved each and every design. They felt like a nice collection of believable characters based on all forms of life. No matter how weird and wacky, each creature made sense though. Legs and joints were fit to carry the bodies they were attached to. Environments characters lived in matched their biology. I especially adored all the tiny blobby creatures that seemed to never catch a break. Those poor little things.
Just look at that sad little face.
Not only did every single alien look epic, they functioned. There was a logic and methodology to the way they operated, the way each alien moved, ate, hunted. It all made sense. It felt like a Rube Goldberg of nature. Everything has its place and role in this chaotic but well-oiled machine. Nature is predictably unpredictable, and this was beautifully articulated with how the creatures interact with each other. I thought it was also pretty neat how the human characters utilized these functions, converting animals into tools or using them to better understand the world surrounding them. Sometimes the actions felt cruel, but not necessarily in a malicious way, but rather in order to survive, the humans had to become part of this machine. A game of give and take. The only thing that I didn't love was a few creatures were clearly added as cop-outs for the humans, obvious plot aids, like, "Oh no, there's this giant gorge over here, however will I cross it? Oh, wow, look at this floating bubble creature that I can use to float over the top. Haha!" Like, come on. That was so obvious. It was very jarring because it would remind me that this is a story made by a bunch of writers in a writer's room rather than an actual story taking place before my eyes. Because of this inorganic placement, it kind of took me out of the show sometimes, and I found that pretty annoying, but it didn't happen too often. Just like 3 times. Okay, that's pretty often. Whatever. Let's talk about the humans for a moment. As much as I love this show, I found the humans to be the weakest part of its look. And all of the other elements of it, apparently. I don't know what I've got against these humans, but whatever. Proportionally, everyone's designs are rather naturalistic. I think this did a good job of bringing a sense of believability to the rest of the organisms. If the show chose to have humans with super wacky proportions and shapes, the audience would be less inclined to take the creatures of the planet Vestas seriously. This would be a conflation between what the show looks like and what the designs are representing. See, if we saw a cartoon horse, we would know it's cartoony because we have images of real horses in our mind to compare it to. Fictional aliens, however, we have no frame of reference for. What we see is what we get. Therefore, if a human design is realistic, we are encouraged to believe the same of the aliens. I think going down this path was the right choice, but the end result made the humans feel so boring, almost to the point of distraction. In all honesty, aside from this one character, Barry, and his poncho, I barely remember what the other characters wore. Maybe I could attribute this to the minimal detail, or the majority of the clothes being form-fitting, therefore lacking distinct silhouettes. Either way, the costumes lacked interest to me. And sure, I know not every human dresses like they're a main character, but I still feel like these things could have been pushed a tiny bit more. It feels like a missed opportunity. The thing I liked least about the humans was the hair. Oh my gosh, especially the beards. Because there is absolutely no defining line work, and because the humans are built up of organic shapes, hair frequently looked like a strange amorphous blob. I mean, some shots were like 70% lumpy brown thing, 30% face. The two bearded characters, Sam and especially Cayman, were sometimes hard to watch because it felt like the mouths of floating islands in a sea of undefined blech. Sometimes I felt like these designs were lacking in soul. Maybe it's the smaller eyes and inclusion of scenes that felt rotoscoped. Something about the way these characters emoted and moved felt like they were wearing a mask. I don't know, I wanted to dive into it here, but after thinking on it for way too long, I really couldn't figure out why I felt this way, if there was a solid reason for this. So, let me know in the comments down below if you have an opinion, if you agree, or if you think I'm crazy, because I really want to know what's happening with this plastic look and help us out on how to avoid it for ourselves. Scavengers Reign is actually based on a short Charles and Joseph made for Adult Swim in 2019. The short, Scavengers, shows a primitive version of what likely became Sam and Ursula. And frankly, I much preferred these earlier designs. They were a little wonky at times, but it had a charm. There was just a touch more detail in the hair, and the eyes were marginally bigger and more expressive. I think the bearded mouth was also more successful because here, the character didn't talk. I know that this was an idea Joseph had for the show proper too, so maybe things just didn't translate super well into the final series. Or maybe I'm just being a hater. Editing Anya and her glowing orb here for some follow-up thoughts on my thoughts about Scavengers Reign. Okay, so upon review of my own words and rewatching the show itself, I realized that I think I was too harsh in some aspects of this video. I do want to stand by my gut reaction, which is what this script is based off of, but I also want to acknowledge that sometimes when we, as filmmakers and critiquers, review other films, other content, we end up seeking problems. Like, we're looking for things to complain about, to dislike. And I definitely adopted some of that mindset. And so, do I think the animation is meh overall? No! I think that it's one of the best animated adult shows currently out. Like, you know, it's hand-drawn. It's very uncommon in today's landscape. Do I think that Cayman's beard is really that distracting and terrible? No, I think it's fine. You know, I would change it if it was my show, but it's not, so it's okay. And, you know, I think just overall, I love this show very much, but I ended up spending more time than I was expecting saying what I didn't love. And so this is just a message from future Anya saying, you know what? This show is really good. Please watch it. Even if there are flaws, they are really not worth concentrating on, because if they're really worth concentrating on, then the show is probably not worth watching, unless it's like to not repeat those mistakes. Anyway, I just realized this orb is making me really stripey and flickery because electronics are funny like that. Anyway, I hope that's not too distracting. Thank you so much for reviewing my, what is this called? Like, editor's note. I always do this. I swear half my videos contain little editor's notes where it's 2 AM and I've got my glass of milk and my Stroop waffles, and yeah, I don't even know why I'm holding this orb. There was no need. I just wanted to be strange and quirky, and I guess I did that, but in a really cringy way.
Anyway, goodbye. Thank you very much. Bye bye bye.
Why this show is important to watch. For frequent visitors of my channel, you know I don't typically do these review style videos, but this time I felt it was important. If you're a consumer worn by franchise fatigue and formulaic drivel, I believe it is your duty. Okay, duty is a bit of a strong word, it's not that deep. It is in your best interest to be vocal about the series out there that are different. Show your support by watching content you want to see more of. Let networks know the value of these productions by providing that watch time and encouraging others to do the same. This show is one of the few adult animated series out there that doesn't rely on raunchy humor and slapstick comedy. In fact, it's not even a comedy at all, and that's super rare in itself. Unfortunately, animation is still treated like a genre to many people. By default, it is assumed to be a medium made for kids and is hardly ever taken seriously. When content like this, BoJack Horseman, Arcane, and Love, Death and Robots comes out though, it is an opportunity to remind the wider public that animation can be anything. If you like dramas with serious overtones and awe-striking visuals, I implore you to watch Scavengers Reign. It truly feels like a breath of fresh air. I've not heard anything about a season 2, but with its high ratings, I really hope it gets another season greenlit. Okay, that's it from me. If you were expecting part 2 to my indie animation revolution series, I am so sorry. I know I'm like almost 4 months behind, but I promise it's on the way. I just got super swept up by life, and also as I've been working on the script, it's just grown and transformed into something totally new. And since the release of part 1 in October, I have shifted gears, and I cannot promise when it'll be out, but just get ready for the insight of a multitude of creators, both from the indie and the corporate side of animation. I think you'll like it. I think it'll be worth your time, so thank you for your patience. For now, thank you so much for watching. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I make all kinds of art and animation related content. Don't forget to hit the notification button to counteract my deeply inconsistent upload schedule. If you want more from me, I have plenty to offer over at my Patreon, including some content for free, so hey, go check that out. A huge thank you to my current patrons: Adio, Tia Lee, Christopher Wade, Danny Manigway, Miriam Huot, Cass, Bandar, Yulia, Logan Barrios, Natalia Bednarova, Daria Del Monaco, Vincent Soderberg, Mercedes Martinez, Poverensky, The Only Body, Annie Phelan, and Tyler Haggerty. Thank you guys, you really truly mean the world to me. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok at Meppity, and if you want to see my professional work, head over to my website, meppity.com. I also have a merch store where you can get beanies, t-shirts, tote bags, all kinds of stuff, and if you like it, you should head to meppity.shop. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, night, morning, evening, and I will see you all soon. Bye!